Hi, this is Steffi and welcome back to the FinancialFox. Today on the show, I have the great Robby Yung, CEO of Animoca Brands. Their Web3 company focused on gaming to build an open metaverse with a growing portfolio of over 400 games, which is so impressive. And we are going to talk about NFT license, digital property rights in the metaverse, and also, obviously, Web3 gaming. But many exciting things are happening at Animoca, so stay tuned. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, click the subscribe button now and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our news and interviews. Now, let's go straight into my conversation with Robby. Hi, Robby. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. Listen, it's great to have you on the show. So shall we maybe start just with a quick intro of yourself? What is Animoca for people that don't know about it?
Sure. So Animoca Brands is a game company. We focus on giving gamers digital property rights. So we operate at the intersection of blockchain and games. And so we operate from 16 studios around the world. We're about 1,000 people. And we also have, aside from having one of the largest portfolios of games in Web3, we're also, I think, one of the largest investors in Web3, at least by number of companies. So we have a portfolio of about 425 companies now that we've invested in.
Wow, that's very exciting. Okay, so you mentioned about digital property right, which I would like you to explain perhaps a little bit better, because there was also a discussion between NFT license and creator royalties with Blur and OpenSea, and I know Yacht made a statement, telling about the importance of creator royalties. So yeah, maybe tell us, what do you mean about digital property right via NFT?
Okay, so I think the idea is that we think about property rights as being quite fundamental. If you think about property rights and what they mean, we actually had the idea of personal property is what gave rise to the idea of why we should have laws. Because the only reason we decided as a civilization to have laws was because we wanted to protect our stuff. And we had to have some way of deciding, hey, this is my stuff and this is your stuff and we disagree, and so we need some rules. And hence we decided to make the rule of law. And so as we thought about law, it was fundamentally based on the idea that we have property rights. And in the digital realm, we have not had any kind of these rules for, the last 25 years that we've been creating digital content. And the reason is because we didn't have a way to properly protect the copyright of those items. We couldn't prevent them from being copied. But now, thanks to the blockchain, if we encrypt those items, the ownership of those items as NFTs on the blockchain, we can at least tell you one by one which of these items are legitimately owned by who, because we have the provenance. And because of that, we can actually then ascribe property rights over this particular digital item. It's true, you can, make a copy of my digital artwork just the way I can hire somebody to make a copy of an oil painting, but we can tell which one is the original thanks to the blockchain. And so now that we have established this idea that we can have these digital property rights, then the next question is, what do we do with that power? Like, how can we make sure to create a system which respects the ownership of those property rights, but also rewards the intellectual property that is created and contained within those items? And I think that's very important, because if we look at many different forms of media, music is the most obvious one. We've had a system in place for the payment of royalties with regards to music for, almost a century, right? I think it started in the 1950s in America primarily, where we began the process of paying musicians royalties and songwriters royalties for their music when it was played in certain environments. You could buy a record album and play it at home, but if you decided to play it at your restaurant, for profit, then you had to pay a royalty because it was a different kind of usage. And the same thing should apply to other forms of content as well, right? It applies
like cinema, for example, movies.
Exactly. So why shouldn't
Exactly.
Exactly. So why shouldn't this also then apply to digital items that we exchange online in digital form, whether it's artwork or digital fashion or digital music, etc.? And so what the technology of NFTs allows us to do is to establish those rights, but then we must agree on how we are going to honor and uphold royalties in that system. And I think this argument goes to a very fundamental concept, which is why should we pay royalties? And I think the answer to that is simple. We pay royalties because creators, number one, need to make a living. But more importantly, I think creators need to be incentivized to create, because the reason they do that is part passion, but also because it's a vocation. They make a living doing so. And if they don't make enough money doing so, they're not going to create, and you're going to lose, the opportunity of attracting creators to the space. So I think we have to strike a balance when we think about creator royalties to make sure that people are compensated fairly for the work they do. And I think that's what a lot of the recent debate has been about.
I think that's very interesting because you are kind of like outlining the base and the fundamental of the digital economy, which is property right, which is rewarding creators, and where gaming comes in the mix.
Mm-hmm. So gaming comes in because it's funny. Gaming used to be a very small part of the media industry. It was kind of a mainly thought of as something that was for kids, etc., etc. But over the years, gaming has become more and more sophisticated, and we game on many different platforms, and particularly since we started gaming on mobile devices, gaming has basically eaten the world. So most of the media spend and most of the media industry now is dominated by gaming. It's the biggest form of entertainment. And so as a result, gaming pervades into all of our lives, and it's very interesting because game companies actually turn out to be the ones that in this new age of content and metaverse development, etc., are the ones best suited and positioned to be the developers of that kind of content, because we're the ones who employ all of the 3D artists and all of the people who know how to do back-end engineering, etc., to create all of these digital goods. So I think it's fallen to us to kind of spearhead this vision.
Okay, and you as Animoca, you have invested in a lot of gaming projects, which is we want to mention obviously the sandbox, which is more than a game, it's a metaverse. So which is the game that you're more excited about, or, maybe not the most excited, but the one that, perhaps in your portfolio you want to share some insight. I don't want you to be partisan or something, but
This is the typical question. Okay, but really, tell me, which one of your children is the best?
I don't have any children. That's tough. But
So I think when we think about games, we always think about periods of time. So whatever we're working on at the moment and launching at the moment typically takes the most of our attention. I think we have a couple of very interesting, very high quality AAA games out there. One is called Phantom Galaxies from our Blowfish studio in Australia. And the other one is called Life Beyond from our Darewise studio in Paris. And these are both they're games of a level of quality that I think would surprise many people who are negative about gaming in Web3, because I think that they would find that the game experience that you find here is very much, on par with any other platform. And I think people would be surprised that these are Web3 games. I think that's great, because I think it's up to us as an industry to continue to try to raise the bar and keep people's expectations, exceeding people's expectations. And these are very deep, immersive, graphically, visually stunning games that I think people will enjoy.
Okay, that's sounds exciting. I'm looking forward. Now, moving to the VC arm of Animoca, because I'm trying to kind of understand how you are positioning yourself and driving innovation in the space. So you have got this vision where you're trying to put in together all the fundamentals of digital economy, and then you have got an investment arm as well that take ideas, take games and bring them to the next level. What are your investment criteria? How do you get involved with these games? Do you incubate them? Do you pick them? Do they pitch to you?
Sure.
And why you decide to go for one game rather than another game?
Okay. So within our investment portfolio, I think games probably make up the biggest single group or category, although I'd say game companies in general probably are less than 40% of the portfolio. So there's a lot of other things there too. But in terms of thinking about game companies specifically, we tend to look at a lot of the same sort of traditional things that you would look at in a game company. You look at IP, you look at the team, you look at their track record of being able to deliver not just engaging content experiences, but also being able to service those communities well. Because in Web3 particularly, products are, over the last 10 years, games have really evolved to become much more of a service than a product, because the content journey continues, right? We think about a game not being finished at the moment that it's launched, but that when the game is launched, that's just the beginning of the journey, and that you continue to develop new content and new features and new activities over time. So games are really becoming much more like a service, and so for teams, it's important that they understand how to build and maintain that relationship with their player base and their community. So we look at all those different aspects, and we look at IP. And this IP can be licensed IP or it can be self-developed IP, but that's also a very important part of being able to develop that relationship with their community, is also being able to develop great IP that really resonates with that community.
Okay, how difficult was to build this portfolio, and also for gaming project to build during the bear market?
So I think game projects don't really care whether it's a bear market or a bull market in crypto, so that's good.
That's cool.
Because people always like to play games. The nice part is that games are counter-cyclical. So when you're really busy and doing well and busy at work, people like to blow off steam and play games. When you're out of work and isolating at home during a pandemic, you also like to play games. So people like to play games all the time. I think that this year is very obviously, these last several years have been quite kind of turbulent as far as market conditions go, and I think that this year is definitely a building year, both in the Web3 gaming sector for sure, but I also see projects out there, launching playable NFT collections, launching new products all the time. I think the pace of new launches is slower than it was last year or the year before, just because I think the bar has gotten even higher, so that projects really need to be able to show quality and thoughtfulness, etc., before they can consider launching. Whereas I think in 2021, for example, there was a race to just get stuff out the door, even if it wasn't 100% perfect.
Yeah, exactly. But something quite exciting is that also Animoca is releasing something new, which is the Mocaverse. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about it.
The Mocaverse. The Mocaverse was basically a project that we conceived of internally to try to see how we can engage our wider company community. And when I say our company community, it's the community of everybody that has anything to do with Animoca Brands. So this is everything from our shareholders and investors to our investee companies to our staff and team members to business partners that we work with regularly, and cooperate with, everybody who's in our ecosystem, who we work with. And we thought the best way to do that is, why don't we do what we do best, which is we'll launch an NFT collection and make everybody holders of these NFTs. And these NFTs will then be basically membership tokens within our community to recognize the roles that people play in our community. And it will also help us to galvanize their interest and work around different topics. So people who like to focus on, learning and education can create community together. People who like building things can do that. People who like playing can do that. So it's a great way to connect people together within our community.
Okay, if somebody is not yet part of your ecosystem or a partner,
Yes.
how can they get involved?
First, we hope that it's an encouragement to become part of our ecosystem. But also, like with everything else in Web3, you can go to OpenSea and you can buy a Mocaverse NFT, and then you can come and join the fun as well. We want to be able to make this something that's open to everybody, and of course, permissionless and decentralized, like everything else we do.
Okay, tell me more about Animoca Investor, because I think a few months ago, Yacht was stating it was looking for another fundraise, and I wanted to understand what support have you got from your investors, and how much you want to grow.
So, I mean, first, big shout out to our investors and shareholders. We're so lucky that we have such strong support from some fantastic people and institutions. Without them, we couldn't have done anything. But I think that Yat specifically was referring to a new fund that we launched in January called Animoca Capital. And this is actually one that I'm quite involved in directly myself. And Animoca Capital is geared at what we would consider growth stage of capital. So this would be more traditional private equity pre-IPO situations, because the idea here is that we see the Web3 industry maturing, and we believe that we will see a first wave of IPOs coming from the Web3 community, in 2 to 3 years from now, so 2025, 2026. And we think that there are opportunities to invest and support those companies who are already leaders in their field, but, there may be $1-2 billion market cap businesses that we think can go to 5 and 10.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at jurisdiction, is Hong Kong the preferred jurisdiction that has been taking leadership in Web3, or perhaps there are other jurisdictions you're looking like Dubai, the UK eventually? Considering an IPO is quite a big thing, and it would be interesting to see which are the jurisdictions that you are considering.
Yes, I think for IPOs, obviously Hong Kong is our home market, so we would always consider our home, and it is one of the bigger markets in Asia, if not the biggest. And in technology, you can't think about an IPO without thinking of the US, because it is the largest market. So I think those would probably be leading candidates.
Okay, interesting. Now, final question is about AI, because we know, everything about ChatGPT, all the conversation, and I wanted to understand how Animoca is using AI to improve gaming experience.
Sure. So I think, first of all, AI is very cool. Anybody who's played around, right, with ChatGPT or any of the sort of Stable Diffusion and Midjourney, the graphic-oriented ones, it's very cool. And I think that in the short to medium term, I think that it's going to revolutionize the way that we as a company operate, because particularly in a business where the creation of content is the main, production, then for us, these tools are an incredible way for us to increase our efficiency. When you make a game, especially a very sophisticated game, like a AAA console game, much of the time and cost is associated with art and building 3D models and rendering art and graphic designers drawing, because all of these things take time, right? It's very difficult, and there's a reason it's so expensive. And these AI tools will allow us to greatly accelerate our ability to create that kind of content, especially when you think of what I was saying earlier as games being much more like a service today, where you're building a content journey over time. So you start out with, one world, and then you need to create an adjacent world to travel to, et cetera, et cetera. And so this AI technology can help us to create thousands of new characters and new places based on the lore of the environment, because the AI can help us do that rather than having to do it by hand. So I think this will be an amazing. I mean, it's like inventing the photocopier,
Yeah, it's super exciting. Well, we will see where we are going to be just in a couple of years. I think it will be, it will be so amazing where we go. Now, what are you mainly focused on right now? Can you say something?
Sure.
Yeah, about what's next, what you are mainly busy with.
Sure. So I spend a lot of time on Animoca Capital, of course, because it's a relatively new venture for us, and one that I spend a lot of time on personally. So we're looking at interesting companies, there, as well as continuing to meet with the new investors. So there's that side. And then in terms of the games business, I'm very excited about, as I mentioned, the recent launch of Life Beyond from Darewise. And you should check that out if you're, of course, for anybody who's going to Paris Blockchain Week, you should come to Paris and meet the Darewise team who's based there. And so is the Sandbox team, as a matter of fact. And also we've been doing a lot in education recently. So we have a business called TinyTap, and we launched the first collection of publisher NFTs specifically for education around the coursework of individual teachers. And that's been very exciting.
Okay, sounds great. Robby, thank you so much for your time today. It was very interesting conversation. I really enjoy, and I think you've got some exciting things on the go.
Thank you very much.